The Honourable, the member for Cartwright-L'Anse Clair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to finish where I started a few minutes ago, and I only got about halfway through because, as I often say, we've got lots of issues, not enough time to talk about them all. I was just cluing up on the Employment Assistance Services, and me as a member having to take my resumes in arm and go sit down and meet with NELCOR and see why people in my area that were qualified were not getting the jobs, because sadly the services that they needed, the places, the counsellors they needed to go to for this help, the service had been cut, they were removed. Also, the zone boards. Every time I go into district, somebody reminds me of the huge loss. Now that we no longer have the people on the ground with the local knowledge doing the coordinated economic development, that have the expertise to help put proposals in the system that is going to bring benefit back to the region and ultimately generate money and pay for itself. But I've been really saddened that you're working with a government that when they're going to act something, they believe that one size fits all and they axe everything. And there might have been other resources in place in more urban areas, but I can tell you in rural, some of these services were playing a very, very vital role, Mr. Speaker, and our small communities that are bleeding out are really feeling the loss tremendously. Municipal affairs. Municipalities, that's an area that I volunteered and spent a lot of my time, really rewarding time, but not easy. When you're in a small community and you've got aging infrastructure in the ground, you've got a shrinking tax base, you can't balance your budget on the backs of people on fixed income, and I believe that our government needs to be doing all they can to show support to the people that are willing to step up to the plate in those small communities and take on the leadership roles, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to be very interested in seeing what the budget holds in terms of 90/10s for the district, because one of the first things I did after my election, because the municipalities are really close to my heart, I represented all the towns in Labrador on the Provincial Municipalities Board, and I was also a leader in the community where I lived for a long time, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people who sit at those tables and deal with some of the challenges and do it all for free, just to try and bring some benefit into their communities. And one of the first things I did was pull up a list of the money that was put into my district in the last decade. And last spring, we didn't have a member for 3 months. We were waiting far too long for the by-election to be called, and we totally missed a boat on that, Mr. Speaker. And it isn't right. We have many issues. We have communities that are still waiting to get completed with their water and sewer. Can you imagine, in 2014, we got communities still waiting to be fully connected to water and sewer. Communities that are desperately in need of fire trucks. And so I'm anxious. I hope this year when the budget comes out we're going to get double the money, because we certainly missed the boat last year. Mr. Speaker, tourism. We have got so much in tourism in our area. And I mentioned it a number of times when I was petitioning. We've got Battle Harbour, an escape back in time to when Cod was king. We've got Red Bay. We have got Cartwright now. Cartwright is going to be the gateway to the Mealy Mountain Park. Beautiful areas. People are coming from all over the world to get there. And Mr. Speaker, we need a tourism development officer to market that. I remember taking a trip into Alaska on a cruise ship. And one day the captain was opening the helipad on deck 5 because there was ice ahead and there was all this excitement. Hundreds of people were going and taking pictures of a piece of ice that was about the size of that table. And after I got back from Alaska, I went on a little 35-foot cruiser up the north coast into my colleague's district as far as Makovic. And, you know, there was about 20 icebergs around us all the time, dolphins going along. And I thought, we have got so much tremendous potential. And I wish that the minister right now would see the investment. You give a little, you go in and you partner with a community group. You don't have to pay the money for the overhead of the infrastructure. Give some money for the human resources, and I guarantee you, you would get the return on the dollar for that. And I have to speak about youth. As the parent of the mom of a teenager and heavily involved in youth back in my district for many years, I liked something that Justin Trudeau said recently. Often we get up and we say we've got to do this and that for our youth because they're the leaders of tomorrow. Justin said they're leading the way today. And I believe that's why we have an obligation to ensure that our youth, they have the basic right to learn in an environment that is clean and dry and free of mold. And we also need to ensure that there's resources and places put into the community for these youth to go and spend their evenings and weekends so that they can participate in constructive activities. And I believe that when we've got things like that in place for them, it can keep them from being deterred and going down a bad road. At our annual Combined Councils meeting recently, it was really sad to see a young person get up and say, can we access a school in our community that the heat have been kept on for a number of years and it's no use and we're living there, can we use the gym? I don't know what the long-term plan is for these schools. I don't know who's paying the bill, but sadly the answer came back that no, they couldn't be used because of insurance issues and things like that. In the community of St. Louis, I have been lobbying hard for that community. Have come forward with a request for a family resource center worker. They're the only community in my district, I believe, that have no access to family resource center services. And the work that the program directors are doing, very, very valuable work. Not only are they serving the children birth to 12 years, but also educating the parents on things like drug awareness, obesity. And once again, I have to say, for a small amount of money, $40,000, $60,000 to return that you would get on that, it would just speak volumes for itself, Mr. Speaker. And I want to just pick up on, I raised the issue earlier. I said I was really delighted to see my colleague ask questions today about eating disorders. And I know the minister got up after and talked about how complex it is. And I believe we can't pull back from something because it's complex. Right now in our country, we have only got 10 doctors that are specialized in dealing with this. And everybody you talk to is talking about the burnout and the critical piece that there is for education around the whole eating disorders. So I'm happy to see my colleague, who is the critic, has raised this, and I hope that he will continue to do so. Now, Mr. Speaker, my time is running out, but I want to quote a paragraph because we have a lot of issues, and a lot of times you're made to feel like you're whining and you're always a little bit worse off. But I just read a paragraph last night in a magazine, and I'm happy to table it, by the way, if anybody would like to see it. And I want to tell you why it upsets us so much where I live with so many shortcomings. It's because of the resources and the things that we see going out. Here we are with an old boat that can't move 2 feet without icebreaker assistance, and then you watch a documentary last week, and there's a boat heading into Voisey's Bay. She's going like a hot knife through butter, cutting through that heavy ice up on the north coast, and then people wonder why we don't have that. And I read a paragraph and I thought this really summarizes why we are so frustrated. What part of the province is home to the Voisey's Bay nickel deposit? Where will Muskrat Falls hydropower be generated? Where, for that matter, is the Upper Churchill, Gull Island? Where is the iron ore-rich Labrador Trough? I know, that one was easy, right? Which part of the province has 3 newly discovered oil and gas basins off its coast and is perfectly situated as a gateway to Arctic development? The conclusion is inescapable. A region that generates as much wealth and attracts as much investment as Labrador should not have to beg for anything. And, Mr. Speaker, so that's the reason why I feel that our people deserve a voice. They elected me in June with a very healthy majority to be that voice, and I will continue. It's a very, very humble honor to be elected, to be a servant of the public, to bring their issues, because really this is all about the people, Mr. Speaker. It's not about what I want. It's not about my community. It's about serving your district as fairly as you can. And yes, we know there's not enough money to meet all the need, but it's about prioritizing, and sometimes a little investment can certainly go a long way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.